Hello, everybody. So excited to come to you today on the third week of Everyone Discipleship. The last 2 weeks, we talked about John chapter 1, two different sections of John chapter 1. And this week, we're going to be talking about John chapter 4. And I am so glad that John chapter 4 is in the Bible. Before we get into the nitty-gritty and the nuts and bolts of John chapter 4, I just want to say thank you, church, for following through with Everyone Discipleship and following through as a witness and a testifier of the grace of God. Whether you invited somebody to church or you talked to somebody about their soul, or if you handed them an invite card, all of us are trying to do our part to see the gospel advanced in our region. So thank you for following through. Keep up the good work. The Holy Spirit is going to get involved in an ever-increasing fashion to help you be a witness and a testimony to Jesus Christ and his work in your life. So thank you. I want you to know in my own personal life, I've made inviting people to church and talking to people a normal, everyday occurrence. I take the time to talk to people and see how they're doing and try to brighten their day and lift them up. Whether it be a cashier at Walmart or Market Basket, or I'm going through the drive-through line to get coffee, or just in my everyday life, if we're in a restaurant, I try to lift people. I try to engage people and show interest in people without being strange. And this has served me well. I've done this over the last couple of weeks. I've done it my entire life, but I just want to walk this out and be an example to you of someone that tries to live as a witness. I've handed out the invite cards like candy to people through the drive-thrus. When I see somebody, at a restaurant, I'm just handing those things out like candy. They're like seeds that we sow, and God can use those invite cards in your life. So I've done that. I got a great big list together of people that I know used to go to this church, or I knew at one time that don't go to church anymore. And I just started calling people, inviting people, sending messages to people, whether they were Christian or not, if they're going to church or not. And I just invited people and got myself out there. And so I want to be the example. I want to continue to do this. And I got good news. Last Sunday, 7 people got saved, 13 rededicated. That was our first Sunday. This Sunday, we're going to give a salvation message again. The message is hope for the broken world. Boy, are we in a world that's broken. Invite your friends, your family, your coworkers this week, and let's believe God that they're going to get touched, that God's going to draw them, and they're going to get saved. Well, tonight, we're going to delve into John chapter 4. And again, I am so glad that this chapter is in the Bible. Jesus jumps over all these societal boundaries to get to this woman. He jumps over the boundary of gender, of ethnicity, of religion, all these different things. He jumps over those hurdles, those boundaries, to get to one person, to get to this dear lady. She was viewed as a sinner. Everybody knew her lifestyle. She had been with 5 different men. Jesus didn't care. He stepped right over that boundary to get to her, to invite her, to embrace him as the Messiah. She was a Samaritan who were considered half-breeds, and that the Jews should not fellowship or have any camaraderie with the Samaritans. And he jumped over that barrier and said, you know what? Everywhere people are going to be able to worship me very soon when I go to the cross. It's not the Jews and the Samaritans or the Jews and the Gentiles. Everyone that calls upon God from a pure heart and receives Jesus is someday going to be able to worship in spirit and truth. Man, Jesus jumped over that ethnic boundary. Even the religious differences. Samaritans thought they could only worship here, and Jews thought, only the Jews can worship, and there's all this sectarian language being used in Jesus' engagement with this woman, and Jesus just jumps over all of that to get to this woman's heart and say, look, I'm the living water. I'm the source of your worship. I'm him in the flesh right before your eyes. Boy, if we could only have the relatability that Jesus had, if we could relate to people like Jesus did. He jumped over those boundaries to get to the real them. This woman, he jumped over all those boundaries, all those objections that would keep them apart, and he got down to the very heart of the issue. He got down to the place inside of her that really needed to be dealt with. Boy, that's what relatability is. Getting on people's level. We can all do this. It takes a humble heart. It takes interest in people. It takes an understanding, trying to understand what people's context and what their situation is and where they're coming from. You know, immediately when you start to spend time with people and you're trying to understand, you won't be talking as much. You're going to be listening. People will pick up on this right away. When you strive to understand where people are coming from, you'll be a listener. And it sends a signal to that person that you are interested in relating to them and hearing their story. You have to let people talk. When you get down to where people are at and you live in their shoes for a moment and you try to understand them, they're going to talk. They're going to feel unguarded. They're going to feel less guarded. And they will share with you sometimes their entire life story after a meeting or two because they understand that you're trying to relate to them. Jesus had an incredible power to relate to people. And you and I can have the power to relate to people in our life, and all of us can do it. It's nothing supernatural. It's nothing crazy. It's just loving people, trying to understand people, getting to where they're at in their life, and listening to them. And that can create a platform for you to just about talk about anything, whether it be politics or religion, God or football or whatever. If you relate to people and listen, people share with you and the platform gets created for you to share what you want to share. It's really about understanding, wanting to relate, get down to where people are at, and then just listening. Just listening. One thing I've learned over the years, that if you're a good listener, you're always going to be able to find someone to talk to you. And God can use that. Again, I just want to convey the power of relatability. It's about wanting to be where people are at and listening to their heart. Try to institute these principles into your life this week. Be a good listener. Show interest in people. Get down to where they're at and try to understand where they're coming from. Can I tell you, conversations are going to come about in your life that God can come riding in on. When you relate to people, God will create a platform, a springboard, a launching pad for you to talk about the things that really matter. So I want to encourage you, empower yourself with the power of relatability, just like Jesus did. It's amazing. It will change people's life. Well, there's a few other things that I want to talk about, practical things today. We have those invite cards out on the table in the foyer. And I'll tell you what, they're tools. People see a lot of those invite cards and are going to be like, what's going on at that church? They're going to wonder what's happening. They're going to see them repeatedly. And it's just a truth in communication. When people have a touch or they have a brush or they have exposure to a church, a business, whatever, 7 times, they're more likely, after they've had a brush or some kind of contact with a business or church, 7 times they're more likely to come after those initial contacts, those 7 contacts. So if you're handing out cards and somebody else is handing out cards, this town isn't big enough. People are going to start running into us, and they're going to automatically think, all right, that church is a place I need to go when I hit a tough spot. And that's exactly what we want to do. Sowing seeds You know, God in his nature sows tons of seeds and only a few grow. But there's no shortage of sowing the seeds. So I want to encourage you, take those invite cards and pass them out. We have those Try Praying booklets, which is a real creative way to start conversation with people. You go through the book yourself, and then the book encourages you to hand it to somebody else. In the month of November, we're calling it Coffee Card Month. We're actually going to supply coffee cards, $10 coffee cards, for as many people that will use them for a coffee date with somebody that may be potentially coming to Christ or that we're trying to reach. This isn't just to hang out with somebody. This is intentional. We're trying to equip you, really, and empower you to spend time with people by paying for their coffee and talking to them about the things that matter. We have the coffee card month coming up in November, where the cards will be displayed out there where the invite cards are in the foyer. Also, Celebration Sunday is going to be magnificent. You know, if you're involved, or you're dedicating a child, or if you're going to get baptized, even if you're joining the church, I want to encourage you. Invite somebody. Let's fill the house. Let's fill the church. Pastor Dylan's going to be preaching a message about our testimony. The whole day is going to be centered around the theme of our testimony. And I'm even going to ask people in the church to give a short blurb of their testimony so that we can show people exactly what's going on in our church right now, where so many people are having their lives changed. So those are some of the practical things we can do. Use the power of relating to people today. Get down to where they're at, listen to them, strive to understand, and watch what the Spirit of God will open up for you in regards to working with people and talking to people and testifying to people. Those invite cards, the Try Praying booklet, all that stuff is great. And then in November, the Coffee Card Month. I'm going to give you a free coffee card to take a friend or coworker out where you can talk about the things that really matter. What better way to have people bring their barriers down and their walls down and relate to them than over a cup of coffee? And then Celebration Sunday. Let's fill this place with family members and friends and coworkers as we celebrate what God is doing. Well, thank you again, church. You that are a part of Everyone Discipleship, you're leading, you're spearheading what God is doing in this place right now. We want to just thank you, thank you, thank you. Keep it up. Your example is making a difference. It's encouraging your pastor. It's encouraging people in the church. And we're going to celebrate some of the fruit of your labor there on Celebration Sunday, November the 13th. God bless you. Thank you. And we'll see you next week.